Merkley, and he's my guest next on Outlook Portland with Nick Fish on Portland CW.
It's Outlook Portland with Nick Fish, tackling today's issues that affect Portland and the surrounding area. Brought to you by Azumano Travel.
Welcome back to Outlook Portland. My guest this morning is Jeff Merkley. He's the Speaker-elect of the Oregon House. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a delight to be here.
So, how does it feel? What is the sound of Speaker-elect?
It is great. And it's not so much about being Speaker, if you will, but it's about having spent 8 years in the Oregon legislature, and what it signifies is an opportunity to take many ideas shared by many legislators and be in a position to help forge those ideas or that vision and take them forward. And that's just a very exciting place to be.
Well, let's talk a little bit about who Jeff Merkley is. You're from East County, Multnomah County. You have a background both at the World Affairs Council as well as in, I think, Habitat for Humanity. You've been the Democratic leader of the House, and you've been in the legislature since?
Since 1999. And I like to mention that I was born in Myrtle Creek. I spent my early years in Roseburg, so I have a little bit of Southern Oregon values and experience as well that I bring to my life here.
Jeff, as an Oregonian, tell me how you felt over the last 5 or 6 years as the reputation of the Oregon legislature was diminished because of all the partisan infighting and the sort of constant drumbeat in editorial pages about a dysfunctional legislature.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Well, it was extremely frustrating. Being involved in the legislature is a commitment to making Oregon a better place. And when the institution of the legislature is not putting forward the key challenges that Oregon faces and wrestling with them and struggling to make Oregon a better place, then I suffered, my colleagues suffered, the institution suffered. And so now we have a chance, and I tell many of my colleagues, the voters have decided not to implement term limits. They have said, we have some faith that you can turn this around. We have relationships that have been built over many years, since we now have folks who are coming back for their 4th or 5th session, and we have a chance to reinvent this institution.
You know, at the end of one of my favorite films, The Candidate with Robert Redford, he pulls this sort of upset win, and he turns to his seasoned aide and says, you know, now what do we do? Yeah. So the public has given you a unique opportunity, Jeff. You've got Democratic-controlled House and Senate. You've got a Democratic governor. And from my vantage point watching this last election, everyone was sort of singing off the same hymnal in terms of an agenda. So the public has given you a bit of a mandate. Tell us where you want to take that mandate. What are the 3 or 4 priorities of Speaker-elect Merkley? Well,
the thing that makes this fairly simple to answer is that we decided to put out a proactive agenda. We called it the Roadmap for Oregon. And it does overlap substantially with themes that the governor has campaigned on and themes that the Senate has pursued. But it's really a bread and butter agenda. It's about investing in education from Head Start on through universities and community colleges. It's about more accessible, more affordable health care. And it's about increasing our public security, putting at least 100 more troopers on the roads in Oregon.
So schools and kids, health care, and public safety. That's something I think people, I know from my experience as a candidate, those are generally the 3 most important issues that you hear on people's doorsteps. So let's talk specifically what you can do in your new leadership position about each one. Let's start with education.
Well, education is an area where there was intense debate. During the last session, a number of education measures, we made motions to bring this to the floor. They were routinely rejected. We ended up with a lower, therefore, budget than we should have had. And the voters paid attention, because by making motions to move things to the floor, we shined a spotlight on the decision about the education budget. And I don't think voters were pleased with what they saw 2 years ago. So we are aiming at an 80% QEM standard for Oregon.
That's the quality education model.
This is the quality education model.
Which is a bipartisan commission that said we're grossly underfunding our public education.
Yes, this was an idea that originally came from a Republican speaker, that we need to have a way of understanding what we're buying in education. And so if we were to design schools so that based on best practices, schools will succeed, what would it cost? Well, we're not even close to that. But we need to set a floor, a guaranteed floor, so that we know there will be a full school year, decent class size, strong programs, And that floor that we've suggested over several sessions should be at about 80% of what the model calls for. Then we can aspire to more. Now, for comparison, we've been between 70 and 75% in the last few years, and our schools have had no guarantee and have fallen off the cliff when the economy turns down.
Were you encouraged in this last election cycle with all the ballot measures that were turned down by the voters, including the two sort of seductive tax cuts that were offered, that people finally now get it, that when they're offered a short-term tax cut, it often results in more crowded classrooms, less public safety, less public services?
Yeah, certainly the pendulum swings back and forth, where people feel we just have to focus on controlling expenditures. And then at another point, we obviously have to improve our public institutions. Education is the key to our future, it's the key to the quality of life for our children, and it's the key to our future economy, as long as we're looking 5, 10, 20 years out. And so it is, if we don't invest in the next generation, not only will our next generation not succeed and not thrive, but our economy will not thrive. So I think people have come to understand that.
By the way, I was struck locally that we had a local option tax that was on the ballot, and it was the first election cycle I can remember where instead of the debate being around the sky is falling, it was instead, let's invest in success. Let's invest in Vicki Phillips, in a school board that's doing the right thing, and in demonstrable progress. And perhaps at the state level we can do that as well.
Yes.
Here's what we're doing. We've made some reforms. Now let's put money and invest in success.
Yes, and I think that there's been a substantial dialogue now extending over 3 years with Chalkboard Project, bringing best practices under consideration. Stand for Children has been working very much to bring forward ideas that are proven successes elsewhere. So it's not just a conversation about the quantity of resources, it's about taking every dollar and putting it to best use.
Jeff, we have to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about how the governor's budget, which was just released last week, dovetails with the agenda that you've talked about of kids and health care and public safety.
Okay, great.
This is Outlook Portland. Please stay tuned.
Outlook Portland with Nick